We don't involve finance because we don't see the connection between what we're doing in finance and their connection to us. So we're just going to leave them out. But when you actually show, not just tell, but you show what these connections are and how what you're doing influences finance and how we on finance influence you, that's when this relationship changes. So I'm a huge believer in saying, okay, let me partner with non-financial people. Let me illustrate what your reality looks like in a forecast or an analysis. Now do you see why I'm valuable? Now do you see why FP&A matters? And to me, that's it. That's all it's about, is seeing the connection, not just being told.
Hello and welcome. Real quick update today for you. Before we start the episode, I have got something special for all my FP&A professionals out there. If you have ever wondered whether your current FP&A practices and your FP&A department is truly best in class, or you are looking to find out where you are actually falling short, I have created a free FP&A assessment just for you based on my 20 years of experience. It is a quick but powerful diagnostic tool which helps you assess your data, processes, people, and technology, and provides a quick snapshot on your strengths, uncovers your hidden gaps, and gives you a clear roadmap on becoming a more strategic, data-driven finance leader. It takes less than 5 minutes to assess where you stand. The link is in the description below. Thank you. Hello and welcome to FP&A Unboxed, where we dive into real stories, challenges, and wins for finance leaders. I am Tejas Parikh, the founder of Akshar Business Consulting and your host on the FP&A Unboxed Podcast. Today we will be talking to Carl Seidman, who has kindly joined us from the US, from Chicago actually. I don't think somebody who needs much of introduction, but still I'll try my best. He is the founder of Seidman Financial. He is the creator of FP&A Mastery Signature Program, as well as he's a LinkedIn, basically trainer on LinkedIn as well, where he's put a bunch of courses out there and has had more than 100,000 people register for your courses, Carl?
That's right.
Yeah, sounds brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It'll be a brilliant conversation because you are very close to FP&A, right? You've done a lot of training and you talk to a whole lot of bunch of people about FP&A. So it'll be good to learn from your thoughts on how FP&A is doing and where the teams in FP&A are focusing on these days. So you build FP&A programs around critical thinking and modeling for operators, not just investment bankers, right? From people who are working in real life in industry. So can you share a real life moment where somebody has been able to use what you've designed a model to create a tangible impact?
Yeah, so to your point is the positioning that I use for these development programs is really not intended for investment bankers at all. It's really intended for people who are in corporate finance at companies all over the world who are dealing with the kinds of challenges that companies are always dealing with. And to give you one example, Tejas, this is probably last year. I was with a large manufacturing company, and I was speaking with one of the heads of procurement at this business. And most of the people who are in this audience were not financial people at all. They understood finance a little bit, but they're not finance people. And one of the questions that he asked, he'd been at this company for probably about 30 years, and he said, I have always struggled with knowing whether I should buy a bunch of materials well in advance when the prices are right and just hold on to the materials for future jobs, or whether we should just wait for jobs to come in and then I buy the raw materials as I need them. I don't know what the impact is to profit. I don't know what the impact is to cash. I don't know what the impact is to warehousing. I've been doing this for 30 years and I just don't know. And I remember I opened up a business model and I shared with him another example of where you can combine procurement with inventory, with scheduling and manufacturing, and then use that to translate over to cash flow. And his eyes got really big and he's like, I've never seen anything like this before. If I had known how to do this analysis, I wouldn't be asking this kind of question right now. And Tejas, this is a perfect example, relatively recent, where someone who is not financial says, I don't know how to do the analysis. I don't know how to make the right decision, but if I had that visibility, it would bring a whole lot more comfort to what I do in my work.
Exactly. Right? And he's then able to make better decisions out of it, which is critical part of FP&A.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one thing for somebody to say, I generally know what the right decision is, but I can't quantify it. And it's something else to actually be able to say, if we were to buy this much raw material at this price for these projects over the next 3 months, it's going to cost us this, and this is going to be the impact to cash flow, and this is how much we're going to pull down on a short-term line of credit, versus doing the opposite and saying, what's the impact of that? Can we compare the two of them and really make a sound decision? Unfortunately, a lot of companies, and this is a company more than $1 billion of revenue annually. This is not a small business. And so whether we're talking small businesses or mid-sized companies or large corporations, many people know their jobs. They know what the right decisions may be, but they can't quantify them. They can't put them in front of a CFO and say, I know this is the right decision. This is why it's the right decision. This is how it's the right decision. This is how much it's going to save us. That's why these companies hire consultants. But most people who are in FP&A should be able to do that themselves.
Yeah, knowing the why, I think, makes all the difference. Ultimately, it helps you build that credibility in front of the CFO and the board. That when you make a recommendation, you're not just coming in because you felt like it. You're coming in because you have got enough backup behind it. That is pretty critical, isn't it?
Right, absolutely. That's always how it should be. It's not just reporting in what you think. It's a finance person, you're an accounting person, you're a math person. You should be able to do that math.
So what is the biggest mindset shift you have seen with people, when you try to move them from I get up and do this every morning, cookie cutter, tuck, to try and become a strategic FP&A and build strategic FP&A models? What is the big mindset shift they have to do?
Yeah, I would say the biggest mindset shift is going from being a doer to being a thinker. And rather than just doing your job of like the tasks that you're expected to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, that's very reactive. That's just rote. It's just doing the same thing over again. But what I always encourage people to think about is, why are you being asked to do this in the first place? You have a director of FP&A, you have a CFO, you have a president of the company who's asking you to do this. Why are they asking you to do this? It's putting yourself in the position of somebody else. Why do they care and why should you care? I also think that one of the biggest mindset shifts for me happened, I'll probably say, this might date me, probably like 17 years ago. I remember having a conversation with one of my superiors, and he just said, you're being so much more proactive than most people in your peer group are. You're thinking about how to make me shine. And by me, I'm saying him, right? So I was doing things to really make him successful, to help him shine, to give him the confidence. And I think it's a real different mindset to say, I'm just going to do what I do the way that I do it. I'm just going to be a doer and reactive, to saying, no, I'm going to be thoughtful, thinking about what other people care about and how can I help them be more successful. My success is their success is my success.
That community feeling is critical, pretty critical, right? Being a part of the team and playing for the team is important as FP&A. So you had advised Fortune 500, you had advised mid-market on FP&A transformations and things like that. So what is the common structural or cultural hurdle that you encounter when you're trying to get FP&A to transform?
There's a lot of different areas. So one, I think this is going to sound so cliche, but so many people will say this is just the way we've been doing things, so let's just continue to do it that way. And if you're thinking about transformation and evolution, we're going to step into the next chapter of our company's life, the next chapter of our function's existence. And so it's the question that I often pose to people. It surprises me when I sometimes get these blank stares or this silence from FP&A leaders, where I say, the only thing I'm asking you to do in this initial diligence and this initial exploration is I want you to put together a written inventory of what you're doing right now. And it's not like, hey, take a look at your day and just write down what you're doing by day. It's, no, look at the major initiatives, look at the major processes, look at the major work that your FP&A group is doing today over the last, let's say, 6 months. But then what I want you to do is, to the right, I want you to put down your want list and your wish list of what you want FP&A to be doing. And then also go back to, Tejas, what I said moments ago of, think about your director of procurement. Think about your chief operating officer. Think about your HR manager. All these non-financial people, what would they do if they got more out of the FP&A function and support? Write all of those things down and then put them side by side. And Tejas, when I say to FP&A leads to do that, they say, oh, wow, we've never really thought to do something like that before. And all it is saying, where are you now? What do you want to be able to do? And what's the difference? But it's not just what do you want to be able to do. It's the other people who rely upon FP&A. What do they want FP&A to be able to do that either A, they're not getting, but B, if they did get it, what would it really mean for the business? That's how you create a tangible mind shift and a tangible evolution of an FP&A team to say, let's go from where we are to where we need to go in the next 12, 18 plus months.
I tell you very honestly, Carl, if I am going to share my 2 cents on that, I have met so many FP&A people, they don't even know what their team is doing today. Forget having the vision of what they would like them to do or a greater vision of what the business wants, and then even a bigger foresight of what does that mean for the business. I mean, that's all like you're talking, la la land for them. They don't even know what they're doing today. Why are you doing a month end or a board pack, or why is your board pack got these KPIs on it? Because we've always had it. Or somebody asked for this 6 months back, 2 years back, and 3 years back, or something like that. Is the person still around? Is the person still asking for it? The person is probably moved on. The person is not there in the business anymore, right? But we've always done it. It's there and it's comfortable, and it makes us look intelligent when we have got so much on there. So we do it. That's stupid. That's actually the definition of stupid to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, Tejas, is that finance, it's usually a very slow function. It's a very reactive function. It's lagging behind everything else that's going on in the business, but it doesn't have to be. And in many companies all around the country, all around the world, is that I use the analogy of it's just keeping the wheels on the bus. But it shouldn't be just keeping the wheels on the bus. It's the wheels are driven by the steering wheel and they move more effectively from the engine. So if you have these wheels that are spinning, you better make sure that you're taking advantage of who's steering, where are you steering, what are you trying to do, and have finance be really a value creation function rather than just in support.
Yeah, finance should be a value creation function. That's one for LinkedIn, So given the speed at which models need to be updated today, how are teams balancing the use of Excel or BI, with the need of agility and speed? Because you could model something out and then in 3 weeks, the business has changed some assumptions, ways of working. So how do businesses keep up with that kind of speed?
I can't give a unanimous statement here across the board because I've worked with hundreds of companies and they're all different. So to say to one, oh, you should really be moving over to an EPM solution when they're on Excel, they're going to say, oh, no, we're great with Excel. You go to a company that's on EPM and you say, oh, you should be doing more with Excel. They're like, oh, no, we're fine doing what we are. So every company is going to be different. And what I found remarkable is some billion-dollar companies have completely resigned themselves from Excel. They don't use Excel at all. And then others that are a billion-dollar company use nothing but Excel combined with a basic accounting package. But what I tend to say is rather than be convinced that you must stay on one or go all the way in on something else's, examine what's out there in the market, what you're trying to do. Again, like with that current state, future state of what are you trying to do? If what you're currently doing does not meet that, then you might need to explore additional options. But if what you're doing is sufficient, then why go for some far more robust platform that's just going to make jazzier reports and jazzier models? So I strongly recommend to companies to be really thoughtful of what they need. I had a client just a couple of years ago, and they had a very large software company come to them and make a big proposition of, oh, you should really migrate over to our platform. And the CFO asked me in a call, he says, we talked to this company. Do you think we should go with this platform? And I said, it's great software. I just don't think that you, specifically your company, needs something that's that robust. You just don't need it. And so, back to your point of speed and agility and being able to make updates, it's what do you need to be able to make the updates for? What's the cost of being incorrect? What's the cost of being a month behind or 2 weeks behind? And if it's substantial, you need to make a different evolution. If it's not substantial, then probably stay where you are. And my attitude on all of this is become very familiar with what's out there, ask for very specific use cases from these software providers of what other companies have you worked with that are dealing with the same challenges that we are? What have you done for them? Why has it been helpful? How have you been able to get outside of Google Sheets and Excel? But I'm just going to say one more thing, just as a Excel guru. I believe that you can take Excel and Google Sheets far further with robustness and automation than most people appreciate. And so I always say take it as far as you can go until it really becomes painful, and then start looking to the next chapter.
I had somebody, the Excel book was taking them like 4 hours to just update because of the sheer volume of data and things like that. And then at that point, I'm like, Nick, this now in my world is unsustainable, because if you're spending 4 hours every month just doing this, and the risk of it going wrong is tremendous.
Right. I mean, what's it costing you? Not just in like mistakes and rework, but your frustration, the number of hours you have to put into it.
The manager literally told me on my face, like, if I don't fix this process, my analysts are going to leave. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
very complicated. It's not deep.
Yeah.
And they're really good analysts. I don't want them to
Right.
leave.
No, they're not alone.
Yeah.
They're not alone. That's everywhere.
Yeah. So then he's like, yeah, so now tell me, why do I need to fix this and how do I fix this better? And then I had a very different conversation with him. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, a standard process, as long as it's not taking you far too long, then Excel should do the trick, right? So on the flip side, what's the failure or near misses you have seen where technology or process was adopted too early, too late, or without sufficient planning? I'm sure you've seen failures like this.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, there's one too early, there's one too late. I would say that, one client most recently, they did an implementation, and while the CFO says, it just wasn't a good implementation, I said, look, I mean, all these tools, they're all good tools, but did you really need this? And he said, no, that was the thing, is we don't have a complicated enough business to justify doing this kind of implementation. So they spent a lot of time, a lot of money. It was very disruptive, and then they just went back to doing things the way they'd always had. Which isn't a whole lot better, but it was kind of like they were seduced into adopting technology that was going to solve these problems, and it just made things more complicated. At the same time, there are companies that are growing very aggressively, and I often recommend answering the question, do you need to grow into bigger shoes or grow out of smaller shoes? And what's the consequence of both? So one is, if you were to migrate too early to something that's far more robust, there's a consequence to that. Do you need that? I had a CFO of a small company. I mean, I think this was like a sub $50 million company, and they did an SAP implementation. And I said, for a $50 million company, he's like, yeah, it was probably the wrong move. But once you've put in that kind of effort and that kind of investment, you're probably not going to retire it. So you have an extremely robust, unnecessarily powerful platform for a small company. Just doesn't need it. But then on the flip side, you have small companies that are growing aggressively, and doing that kind of an implementation too late can be a massive disruption and set the company back. So really exploring it over time is important to say, what do we need right now? But what might we need 12 months from now? And sometimes that means an investment today.
Yeah, and sometimes it also means not even the investment today, but even starting to explore and prepare yourself for that implementation. Because again, a lot of people turn around and say, oh, the implementation went wrong. The reality is your data is wrong. Your business practices sometimes are not appropriate. We did recently an implementation, and they realized that people are booking the timesheets basically 1 week later, 10 days later, and things like that. The system can't fill up your timesheet. The system can show you what hours have been booked, right? And that with the automation, we can get to you faster. But the reality is it can't help somebody fill up a timesheet. So they needed to then sharpen the process and actually make it a deadline that, everybody needs to submit their timesheet within 3 days and blah, blah, blah. So though that process needed to be tightened up, it is just about more compliance rather than basically a technology being the problem and things like that. So
I thoroughly agree with that. And I think what can be very seductive is, oh, here's this wonderful new software. It's worked for hundreds of companies. It's going to solve all your problems. If you have problems, it may make your problems worse. And to your point, Tejas, you got to get the right people. You have to build good processes. You have to have good data before you start putting that fuel on the fire and saying, well, this is going to take us to the next level. So I find that sometimes it just reveals where those problems exist, but you want to know where those problems are before you even go down an implementation process.
Yeah, or be open that this implementation will open up a can of worms, which I will have to deal with after. And as long as you are mature enough to be open to that conversation, it's fine. Because a lot of people get very upset when I'm talking to them, and I'm telling them, like, yeah, but this is not going to solve your problem. You're asking me for an AI tool and AI-enabled AI this and AI. AI is not going to solve your problem. Your data is rubbish or data doesn't exist. AI cannot make up data, right? I mean, I've not seen any AI make up data, and I don't want to see it because that doesn't help in decision making either.
And that's, again, I mean, it goes back, Tejas, to the current state and the future state of, like, what are you trying to do? Just be clear on what you're trying to do. What you can't do right now that needs to be in place in 18 months, 12 months, and address those questions. But then also think about, well, once we address those questions, there's going to be more to come, and what's the right software suite for us?
Perfect. So you've trained more than 13,000 finance professionals globally, right? I mean, my number could be wrong. I don't know what's the updated number according to you.
Those are live professionals. It depends on if you're talking online courses or just live, but the live is over 13,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, live. Let's stick to live,
Yeah.
right? So what are your thoughts? What is the real skill which people or businesses seem to be asking for a lot more? Is it data modeling? Is it storytelling? Is it scenario planning? What in your world is in demand?
I think it's all of the above, but in a lot of my programs, I put up a slide. Those people who are listening to this who've gone through any of my programs may even know what slide I'm talking about. And I just put side by side, I say, you got mechanical questions, you got intelligence questions. Mechanical questions are around how do you actually physically build something to answer your questions, right? So how do you put together a data model? How do you put together a financial forecast? How do you put together your analysis? I hate to say it, but a lot of that's not really taught in school, so people need to learn that. They probably need to learn that earlier in their career. The problem that I've encountered, especially on the FP&A side, is it's not really taught anywhere. While there are training companies out there, a lot of people will come to me and say, yeah, I took a training through a training company or this person, and yeah, I learned some basics. I learned how to plug numbers into models, but it's not nuanced enough given where our company is. So then on the other side is, say, the intelligence questions. And Tejas, this is the difference between being a doer and reactive and being proactive and being a thinker. So the intelligence questions are, why am I being asked to do this in the first place? What are the consequences of my analysis? If my assumptions are wrong, what does that mean? What's going to happen if tariffs are far worse than we anticipated them being? So it's the thoughtfulness around FP&A, not the doing of FP&A. And I still, struggle with this in my own cohorts and my own mastermind groups is, how do you teach people to think? And what I tend to do is I say, here's the model. We've built the model. Now you're comfortable in how to build this thing. But what are these numbers actually telling you? If, a certain figure is going down, why is it going down? How can we change, operations to have that number not bleed anymore? And I just did a session, trying to think where we were, about 3 to 4 days ago. I have my signature program. We meet 2 times a week, and I was with them. We were going through this very sophisticated operating model, and people's eyes just like lit up when we were going through this exercise. And they said, Carl, nothing that you're talking about here is difficult in terms of Excel. And I'm like, no, we're doing addition and subtraction and division here. And they're like, I thought we were going to get like really, really advanced. And I was like, this is advanced. You don't have to have advanced Excel formulas and functions to be a higher level thinker. And a lot of people in this group, they're business owners, they're CFOs, they're consultants, These are not people who are just FP&A people. These are people who really have to understand business. That, to me, Tejas, is the big difference. Is we need
Absolutely.
people who know how to think and understand what's going on versus being doers.
Yeah, no, again, I remember I did a business financial modeling for basically investment appraisal model for a very big hotel chain in the UK, and I will not name them, but did work with them, and they were investing in 2 billion capex pre-COVID every year on an Excel-based model, which they had no idea how it worked because people had put so many different macros and so much of stuff in it. Nobody knew what the hell was happening. They would put in inputs and pray for the outputs. Assumptions were not updated, Carl, for 5 years. So 5 years of inflation and things like that, nobody knows. I'm like, how the hell are you doing this, man? 2 billion is a lot of damn money to throw away. Updated the whole thing for them, built a fully new model, zero macros, and believe me, I don't know macros or VBA, so I am incapable of implementing them. And I am very clear. I'm like, if I write a macro and if I go away, you are not going to figure it out. And that's what had happened previously as well. I am not going to continue. With your simple sum, VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, simple formula, you should still be able to do this. Built a 25-year forecast model. I have to highlight, they clearly knew where to go and update for assumptions, where to provide current inputs, what to do, where is your output, blah, blah, blah. So when you're trying to trace back, and if I can see something output and doesn't look correct, you can trace back of where does it look awkward to you. Thing like that, it's very basic and it was not complicated. It was a lot of basic business logic built into a spreadsheet.
You bet. Yeah. And to go back to that mechanics versus intelligence is great. You can put all of the energy and effort in the world in the mechanical side to have all kinds of bells and whistles and macros and whatever. But if it's not easy to work with and it's not intuitive and it's not giving you answers, it's worthless. Whereas you can have something on the intelligence side that answers your questions, supports your business, is relatively easy to update. And you don't need to get overly sophisticated with that. And that's what I want a lot of people to understand is it's about being a more thoughtful professional, thinking about what this thing needs to look like, what other people want from you, and meeting them where they are instead of trying to over deliver something that nobody's going to use.
Exactly. And again, businesses also need to think that even if the person is an employee and not even a consultant, the reality is that no employee is married to the job. Okay. If he or she leaves tomorrow, are you going to be able to sustain that process and that model once they are gone? So you have to assess it from that angle. That if this person were to walk out on me tomorrow, how am I going to do this? GE Healthcare taught me this very, very clearly. If you get run over by a bus tomorrow, we still have to run this business. Literally, that was the motto at GE Healthcare. And therefore, you have to build things which mean that if you are gone tomorrow, the business can still work. It's critical.
100%. 100%. Yep. And I mean, I think that that's a good way to maybe instill some fear into people. But I will go back to the comment I made a little earlier about how like 17 years ago, I had a superior who was like, you're supporting me. You're helping me shine. You're making my life easier. And that's often the spirit that I share with people. I'm like, do your best to make other people's lives easier. Do your best to meet them where they are. Don't worry about like somebody, getting hurt or having to leave the company. But it's just like, if you adopt a mindset of, how can I help you? How can I make your life easier? How can I make your job better? That changes everything.
Yeah, and again, communicate it like that as well. I think, it's a lot about how you communicate and position yourself as well. With finance people, there are times when I find that we come across as a bit more, I know everything type people, whereas you don't need to come across like that. If you come across a little bit more humble, it actually helps you build and foster those relationships much better. I had a case where somebody was challenging me, no matter how good a Power BI dashboard you build, so and so person in the business will never use your dashboard because she has her own. I'm like, I don't know about her. I've just joined. I have no idea what you're talking about. We'll see how it goes. By the time I finished, that person stopped updating her Power BI dashboard and she was using mine. She's like, you've covered everything I need and now given me more. And you've given me extra stuff that actually helps me make better business decisions. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's all I am here to do. Help you make business decisions. I am not running your business. I am just a consultant. I am here to help you make sure that you have all critical information around you for you to make recommendations that you can make. It's not that difficult. I mean, when you put your, big
No.
hat down and do it in a calm, professional manner, it works more or less.
So that's why, it's important. That's why it's important for people to be situationally aware and know what other people want, rather than just, again, being a doer, saying what's necessary and how do I do that?
Yeah. I mean, again, one of the questions I keep getting asked, right? And I had this conversation actually very recently with somebody as well. And the CFO was trying to say that, because, yes, we do everything correctly. We have an EPM tool. We have everything. We have EPM, we have BI, we have ERP. Like, we have everything that we need to have. We still don't get invited to strategic decision making. We don't get invited to those conversations where they would like to be invited to before the decision happens. After, obviously, you have to tell finance you don't have a choice, but before, right? Any advice on that? How do people go get around that one?
I go back to that first example I shared with you on this discussion is, with that procurement manager in the manufacturing company, this is somebody who is in leadership at one of these major plants that this company had. And he, again, shared that for decades, he wasn't really making financially related decisions. But when I showed him how his decisions tie in with finance and how finance should influence his decisions, there was this big aha moment. And I think to answer your question, Tejas, is we don't involve finance because we don't see the connection between what we're doing in finance and their connection to us. So we're just going to leave them out. But when you actually show, not just tell, but you show what these connections are and how what you're doing influences finance and how we on finance influence you, that's when this relationship changes. So I'm a huge believer in saying, okay, let me partner with non-financial people. Let me illustrate what your reality looks like in a forecast or an analysis. Now do you see why I'm valuable? Now do you see why FP&A matters? And to me, that's it. That's all it's about, is seeing the connection, not just being told.
I completely agree. I always look at, business as an orchestra and finance almost as the person who runs, I don't know what that person is called, the guy who runs the whole orchestra, right? Make sure the right
The conductor?
The conductor, yeah. Thank you so much. So I look finance as a conductor essentially, because the reality is we can see as FP&A and finance people how every division works, and if we can help them see how we can help the sales coordinate with operations, coordinate with R&D, and or manufacturing and supply chain and things like that, and how we can actually be tying, not bringing all of these together. They suddenly will be like, yeah, actually, let me tell him, because he will make sure everybody else knows what the hell is going on. And therefore, my program will be successful. And it's in their success that our success lies, right? I mean, otherwise, you can have the best marketing campaign, create a whole bunch of demand, but your operations can't meet it because you have not planned for it. You don't have the raw material for it. And then suddenly, everything goes into a blame game conversation, whereas the finance actually can help. That, okay, I'm giving you extra money for marketing, which means I have to tell operations that extra money is going there, this is coming out, let's be ready for this, and things like that. I mean, it's very basic stuff, but people seem to fail to do it.
The analogy I sometimes use is FP&A's in the air traffic control tower at the airport. And I don't love the word control. It's more of like the air traffic coordinator tower. So, you don't just have the people sitting in the tower who are helping the planes flying navigate. You have multiple air traffic coordinators. You have the people in the air, you have the people on the ground, and it's just making sure that everything's working the way it's supposed to, that there's no mistakes, that planes are giving right of way to other planes that need to go first. It's prioritizing. Once they're on the ground, making sure that the priorities that need to take off before others are doing so, that there are gates. It's about coordination. It's not about FP&A running the show, and it's not about these other groups running the show. It's an orchestra, as you're saying, and you just have like a conductor who's not controlling everything. They're just bringing everybody together.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the way I always look. And then the music sounds so beautiful when it does work together. And when the conductor gets it wrong, it sounds awful. And that's critical, right? So that's the analogy essentially in business.
For sure.
So in your view, right, how is AI in predictive analytics reshaping FP&A workflows, right? Because again, you're doing so much of Excel training
Yeah.
as well. But I'm sure you get a whole lot of question about Copilot or AI or,
All the time.
automated forecasting and
Mhm.
things like that. People want that as well.
Yeah.
So how does that play according to you as we progress towards the future years, near term, in terms of decision support, forecasting, reporting, analytics?
Yeah. It's a loaded question. It's one that I do get all of the time. I don't think I can name a single program conversation I've had in the last year where somebody hasn't asked some dimension of AI. And I think my perspective might be a little bit different from the buzziness that I see in podcasts, on social media, etc. I think there's a lot of buzz. I think there's a lot of people who think that they're already behind because they haven't implemented AI in their companies yet. But I'm going to share just a few instances, and I'm not going to give names here, but I work with some of the leading companies, their FP&A teams, and also FP&A software companies who are at the forefront of this development. And while on one side, I listen to some podcasts where like, oh yeah, AI is everywhere. It's going to take over. All these companies are already doing it. And then on social media where it's like, oh yeah, you better do it or you're going to fall behind. These handful of companies who are at the forefront of this profession, they're nowhere near that. And I'll share one example. I work with one of the leading accounting financial software companies in the world. And my relationships are with the heads of finance at that company. And they're like, yeah, I mean, we're utilizing AI, but we're nowhere near where a lot of this buzz is. We're not trying to get to where people say it's seemingly capable. They're wanting to be far more thoughtful of how to incorporate AI into their work. It's not AI is capable of doing all of these things. Let's just go all in. It's no, we're going to be very, very thoughtful of how we incorporate it, if at all, in the current iterations of a product. So what I might say is, you might say, we're at FP&A 1.0 right now. We're looking to FP&A 2.0. Well, what does that look like? It might be some basic functionality with the use of AI. Tejas, the world is going to change. The world is going to embrace AI far more fully than today. I don't think we're anywhere close to where the maturity curve is going to be, as well as to what some of the buzz is. And I'll just leave a couple of additional points here. There's another software company. They're actually designing the AI behind FP&A ability for many companies, thousands of companies that use their software. And when I was speaking with the chief technology officer, he was saying, oh yeah, AI can do a whole lot. We are not embracing most of it because the risk to finance is just too high. To say, oh yeah, we're going to go all in on AI and maybe it's 80% correct 80% of the time, that's not good enough. So to say we're going to go all in knowing that 20% of the time we're going to be wrong in finance, you get fired from your job if you did that. And so what they're doing, I think very thoughtfully, is they're saying, we are only going to go so far as you would be able to do on your own. We're just going to make AI do it for you so that it's going to save you a whole lot of time. But the answers that our AI engine gives to you, you would be able to get to 100% on your own if you put the time in. And it's going to give you the whole audit trail as to how it got its answers, right? So that's the difference between an LLM, like a ChatGPT or Claude or something like that comes up with its own answers. You have no idea where it came from, and much more thoughtful FP&A technology that says, this is how we got to the answer. And then one very last point, as somebody who knows Excel very well, I believe, having created the Copilot and Excel AI-powered FP&A course for LinkedIn, and I spend a lot of time in Copilot, is that is evolving. It's not in the perfect state right now. I was actually just working with it yesterday. It's not in the perfect state, but it's going to be evolving over time. And I believe that many of these developers are going to say, we want AI to live natively within the software that you're in, rather than have to be in the software and then jump over to a ChatGPT and then go through something else and then leave the platform. I think it's just going to become super native to what we do. But again, I think it's just an evolution, and we're nowhere near the end game. And I don't think we're anywhere near what a lot of people say we are.
Yeah, no, I completely agree on all of those trends, right? And again, I would almost go far as saying that people should not go into AI similar to what we spoke about EPM or FP&A software and things like that until your data and your processes are very clear of what the hell you're trying to do. And then similar to the checks you would do for an EPM implementation, do the checks of, am I automating or AIing the right stuff, or am I just throwing AI at stuff I shouldn't be throwing AI at? Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I get it. I mean, I work with a couple of solutions as well. I work with EPM solutions, and they actually have started like, tell you, I got this number from here, this number from there, this is what it is. And therefore, yes, your final answer is, for example, your budget is overrun by this much, or you have got this much left, or your growth is this, or whatever else. But it gives you the full audit trail of where that comes from. When I see that in AI, I feel as of FP&A professional, I am happier to embrace it, because now I know where it's come from. Okay, I didn't have to do the hard work of bringing 20 numbers and do the math and things like that. So yeah, that is helpful, but I know where it comes from. So if my CFO or my marketing director or my sales director starts cross-questioning me, I won't look stupid. I will still look like I know what I'm talking about. Which is, again, critical, right? Otherwise, you look stupid because you don't know where they came from.
Yeah, I mean, some people use the analogy with AI that it's almost like a college intern. Like, they're very, very smart, but they're not fully baked yet. And I can just imagine being in a client where there's a college intern and they'll give me an answer. I say, well, where do you get that? Where did you get this? Can you actually show me the audit trail? And they say, no, I just kind of made it up, but it's probably 80% right. And I'd be like, I would never be able to hire somebody or stay with somebody like that, right? I mean, imagine if a human gave you that answer of like, well, it's 80% of the way. It's probably good, but I can't tell you how I got there.
Yeah, they'd get fired, like literally. I spoke to a CFO 2 weeks back, and he's telling me his FP&A team is achieving 96% forecast accuracy, and he's telling me he's not happy. I'm like, I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, like 96%, I'd say is a very good percentage of accuracy in forecast, right? But he's saying he's not happy. And then here we are talking about AI giving me 80% accuracy. He'll probably tear the AI apart, right? It won't work.
Right.
Anyway, one strategic question to every CFO or FP&A leader is asking is, what's next for us? Okay. What would you give? What would it be?
What's next for FP&A from a strategy side?
Yep.
I think that it depends on the company you're asking. I mean, again, I get to work with some of the most forward-thinking, modern companies out there, and then I've also worked with some small businesses that are nowhere close to that. I think that where a lot of companies want to go is years ago, we were always talking about big data and saying, okay, well, what do we do with big data? Now I think we have so much data, we don't even know what to do with it. So I think that the ability and the speed and the confidence married all together of now we've got so much information. It's not that we don't have the access, it's now that we have too much. So how do we actually do this with speed, routinely, get meaningful insights out of this? And then I also think just with some larger organizations, they're chronically slow. And so I think that to have the ability to move quickly with a high level of confidence and be able to vet back to why did we make this decision, I think that that's FP&A 2.0 and 3.0. And a lot of that's going to have to be enabled by technology. But a lot of that's going to have to be enabled by a new way of thinking that FP&As just haven't done in prior years.
Yeah, and I think I agree with your, because in the entire episode today, you've been talking about this. I'll summarize this back. That the thinking has to come before the technology. Yes, you need technology for the FP&A 2 and 2.0 and 3.0, but the thinking has to come before the technology. Otherwise, you will blame the technology, but it's not the technology. It's your thinking which is lagging, which is not.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a Fortune 500 company last year. It's a big food company. And they were making that same point is, yeah, they're doing a massive investment on the technology side, but they're like, look, we can't just invest in the technology and expect that it's going to take us to the next place. All of you need to come to the next level too. And so it's really the paradigm of both need to be running together, of we need to be acting differently because the technology is going to enable the kind of thinking that we want to employ and bring it to bring it in real time.
Okay, quick fire. My last three standard questions, which I'm asking everybody. Okay, so where do you think is the future of FP&A in next 3 to 5 years? You're not allowed to say AI. So AI apart, what is the future of FP&A in next 3 to 5 years?
I think a lot of it's going to be speed. I think that it's going to be, we have better processes, better thinkers, and better technology. All of this is going to result in better speed to market, better speed to change, and again, a higher level of confidence in being able to do so.
Perfect. So what is the one thing you think most FP&A functions are missing today, which is why they are not good strategic finance business partners?
I think that, at least in some of the organizations I work with, is there's a degree of complexity that makes it very difficult to involve the right people at the right time in the right way. I don't know, what I sometimes say to people is, if you really think about it in terms of the progression of humanity, we have the most people on this planet that we've ever had, the most company. I mean, the idea of a company didn't exist, centuries ago. So we are in enterprises that are bigger, more complicated, more influential than ever before in the history of humanity. How do we deal with that? And so I think that one of the biggest issues is we need technology to help enable that, but we also need people to think differently, like they're not running a function, and then they're also not just one cog in a machine of a function. So it's going to, I think, come down a lot to transferring of information and better communication across groups, across channels, across the world.
So for someone who's starting in FP&A or is looking to start in FP&A, what is one skill or certification you think they should be looking to acquire?
I always say to people, if you do not know basic Excel and basic modeling, start there, because that's going to be the key to open the gates to everything else. You don't have to be a master. You don't have to be super advanced, but you need to be able to do that mechanical side in order to unlock the intelligent side, right? So you can't be a super strategic critical thinker without knowing how to do the work. So you've got to be able to do the work that's then going to open you up to be a thinker. And Tejas, what some people sometimes get surprised from me when I say is they see me doing all different kinds of modeling and lots of work in Excel, and they say, oh, how many of these do you build like in a year? And I say, not many. I hardly ever do the modeling anymore, because the way that my career and my work has evolved is I'm now enabling and mentoring and coaching and teaching other people to do the work that I probably shouldn't be doing, that I did earlier in my career. So what I encourage people to do is to unlock the opportunity, get smarter, get more critical, so that then you can elevate and then you start to become a mentor and a coach to others. And then that's how you start to build a much better function. It's how you get to find yourself on better opportunities. And it's how you get to be seen as somebody who's different than the bunch of doers.
Yeah, no, that is critical, right? I mean, if you build FP&A function which you can hand over those models or get other people to do the modeling the similar style that you do it, then it kind of helps you move forward in life. So yeah, definitely I agree with that one. And again, I like the point that you are talking about automating or, doing the mechanical first, because then you can become a thinker. If you are spending all your life doing the mechanical stuff, then you cannot become a thinker.
You don't want to be a doer for the rest of your life, and you can't really be the deep thinker without having gone through the work and the experience first. So they go together.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Thank you so much, man. That is very, very helpful. Validated a lot of my thinking and gave me some insights as well. Because again, I feel the same about AI. I think it has a huge potential, but in finance, there is a way to go before we get there. So yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that one. So any closing thoughts?
I hope that everyone found this conversation to be interesting. I think that what is wonderful about this profession, but also challenging, is you never get to a finish line. You never stop learning. You never get to this end point where you say, oh, finally I can relax. I can finally calm down because, everything's all good. It's just an evolution like everything else. So, keep paying attention to the developments that are going on in the world. Don't buy too much into hype. And then also, make sure you're investing in yourself so that you can continue to develop those technical skills and find yourself one day in a position of leadership and getting to do some really cool stuff with companies.
Sounds brilliant. Thank you so much, Carl. Thanks a lot for your time. Really, really appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners will have picked up a few things, and they can all get in touch with you via LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Tejas. Thank you for having me.